Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by the Sultan of Steel, Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. And the lovely voice that you can hear is Joy. Nick, tell us a little bit about Joy before you start ripping into me any more than you already have.
Just an easy target at the moment.
Obviously, an easy target.
So it's Joy by name, Joy by nature. Joy is a Mindfit client. Came on board a couple of years ago now, and I'll let her tell her story. But has just gone ahead in leaps and bounds. And I was having a chat with her yesterday in the maintenance program session, and it just dawned on me that she'd be such a inspirational guest to have on. Not just because of her challenges and what she deals with on a day-to-day basis, but just because of who she is and how she goes about things. So yeah, I'm very excited for listeners to learn from Joy and just see what comes out of this conversation.
And I was just thinking, is there any other name that is an emotional state? Like apart from Joy?
Question,
is there any others or not?
Shit cunt, I think.
Grief Hassan.
That's, I mean, I've heard blokes on job sites called that before. So
yeah.
Well,
definitely the C word is very popular.
It's great to have you on. You know, we actually connected in person at a must have been a Christmas do or something.
I think it was.
There's another one of them coming up shortly.
I haven't got an invite.
Yeah, where's my invite too? I haven't got that.
I'm just planning it. God, slow down. Desperate for a party, are we, people?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there with you, Joy, and just having a discussion. And it's funny, just some people you meet and connect with for the first time, and I don't know what it is, but I just sort of felt, inspired by you and just your actual energy that you were giving across and everything. And yeah, I'd love for everyone listening to sort of hear a little bit about, well, not a little bit, a lot about your story and, what some of the things you've been through, what led you to, reach out to Nick in the first place. And as much as you're willing to, I guess, trying to open up around some of the issues that we all have to varying degrees, but sort of your flavor of them.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I reached out to Nick a couple of years ago, was recommended from another horse riding friend. So because I was having some challenges finding someone to relate to that had something happened to them physically that was then stopping them from being able to do the physical things that they wanted to do. So my story is that on Christmas Eve 2010, I had a horse riding fall to end up as a paraplegic. So it was my family were there that witnessed the fall. I was then carted off in a helicopter on Christmas Eve. And the worst thing was that I hadn't wrapped the kids' Christmas presents. So that was always something I did Christmas Eve with my husband, with wine or whatever. And I wasn't quite organized that year. There were still some things that I needed to get. So that was really, really challenging. That's still something.
Are you thinking of that while you're in the helicopter, Joy? You're like, shit, I've left the kettle on and I haven't wrapped the kids' presents. Oh, no, I can't feel my legs.
Yeah, like I don't remember the actual fall. Like I remember what led up to it. And then I remember coming to with the ambulance guys above me going, the helicopter will be here soon. And me going, oh, shit, I must be bad. And then sort of the green whistle, great, floating in and out of things, but going, oh, my God, it's Christmas Eve and I'm not organised. And I had stuff hidden throughout the house, and I couldn't remember where under those circumstances, where I'd hidden things. And so then I'd wrecked, everyone's Christmas, because it was, Christmas is a time of family and joy, not, you know, and happy times. And so it was so challenging for everybody that Christmas. And I think it resonated so widely through our community at the time that, you know, I was a mum of little kids, 4, 7, and 10 they were at the time. So it was a big thing for everyone to wake up on Christmas morning and mum not to be there. And they'd flown me to Royal Melbourne and done some scans and ascertained I'd broken my spine at T6, which is in between your spinal cord, and they'd broken the news that, you know, that there was spinal cord injury involved and that I would quite possibly never walk again, and that because the next day was Christmas Day, it was quite unlikely that they would operate on me because obviously of the day. But so my husband and my mum went home, understandably, and I was then transferred to a different hospital, to the Austin, which is the spinal hospital in Melbourne. And but then they decided that they would operate on me on Christmas Day. So I made sure that I was not you know, sedated until I got into the room, and I could thank everyone in that room for coming in on Christmas Day, and sorry for wrecking their Christmas Day, because they were not with their family, they were with me. So
I'm seeing a theme here.
It's amazing where the mind goes, isn't it? It's amazing where the mind just wanders off to.
Yeah, like it just, I just remember that and just thinking, you know, it's such a family orientated day, and here they are selflessly. I know it's their job, but still it's it was a really big thing. So then, you know, Mick and my mum then came back down because they of course wanted to be there to support me through that, but then that mean that they left the kids. So and my then husband has a very big extended family, so they were there to look after them, and my sister-in-law Paula, who was a school teacher, but she very much sort of went into, you know, a great mode of, all right, well, I'm just going to go down the street and get the kids some gifts so that we know that we've got gifts for them on Christmas morning, and that's not something we also have to worry about. So yeah, it was quite the journey. The words you don't ever want to hear is "you will never walk again." But that's the minor part of it. It's like, yes, you lose your gross motor function of being able to walk, but it's all of the other things that you don't know about that you lose. So your bladder, bowel, and sexual function is severely compromised. I can't regulate my body temperature anymore. I have some challenges with blood pressure, and you age very differently, and so osteoporosis becomes a challenge as well. So yeah, there's lots of, you know, things to tackle and deal with along the way.
Do you remember
It has a
that?
ripple effect on many levels, doesn't it?
It does.
Physiologically, socially, family, and it affects so many people on so many different levels.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing I think about it was that it certainly educated and exposed our family. And as I said, Mick has a very big extended family, and also the community of then the challenges of someone in a wheelchair and with a disability, because that's not something we had been exposed to, of you know,
uncharted waters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was uncharted waters, you know, from the basics of a disabled car park is not a disabled car park. There are so many variations to that. And there was car parks in the local community that you had to then push out onto the road to get then onto the footpath because there was no cutouts. And then a lot of the local shopping area has a huge camber on the footpath. So you're sort of pushing along at an angle, and there was, you know, just so many things.
A whole new world.
It was absolutely a massively whole new world. And from simple things of like, all right, well, toilet routines, showering, managing fatigue, also skin issues, because my blood flow through my body is not as an able-bodied person's would be. And so I've got to be careful with pressure sores. Like I can't sit for long periods of time. I have to make sure I do a pressure relief so that I don't then get sores, because then my healing ability is compromised as well. So it's a very multifaceted injury and very challenging.
Do you
It's an
remember
amazing
getting that?
example.
Yeah, sorry, Nico. Do you remember getting that
Yeah, right.
news, or have much recollection of when, you were first told like you're not going to be able to walk again? Like something
Yeah.
that huge, it brings back memories. I remember I was in hospital as a 19-year-old with Crohn's disease stuff, and a guy had come in who'd been in a really bad motorcycle accident. There's like one of those public hospitals where there's like 4 people in the one room with the curtain, and
Yeah.
I still, it vividly is in my memory today. The doctor came in to tell him that they would have to amputate, one of his legs, and I still remember his scream, like it was, kind of heartbreaking. And I imagine kind of myself when I've got nothing like that, but catastrophic news, I tend to dissociate. So I'll kind of dissociate where I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll deal with it later and pretend it's not real. Do you remember your response to the news initially?
I remember receiving the news. I don't remember any sort of great scream or anything, just a bit of like shock, I suppose. And then you are constantly going, it takes you a long time to accept it. Like it's taken me years to accept it. You always, I suppose, live in hope that there will be a cure. And there's some really great things happening around that with stem cells at the moment. So you always live in hope, but you have to accept it at certain points. And that for me did take years.
I remember
there was
we had a
always
chat, Joy. We had that chat about hope is the hangman's noose. Sometimes when hope goes past a certain point and you hold on to hope too tightly, then it becomes emotionally damaging.
Absolutely. And
but it's important too. Hope's important. So it's having, it's accepting it and embracing it. Right, this is my current reality, but I'm still allowed to be hopeful. I just can't demand it or expect it or need it to happen.
Absolutely. And I remember sort of tying up my self-worth around walking again, that was I would that was the be all and end all. And through lots of work with Nick and the journey that you then go on, because I'm 13 years post that change now, and it doesn't mean I can't have a great life. It's different to what the life I imagined I would have, but everyone's life never turns out how you plan, does it? It's like you can plan whatever or expect or whatever that your life is going to go in a certain trajectory, but there are so many variables in our lives that we can't control, and it's about just accepting and embracing what you do have.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, that's right.
Or falls off the horse.
Yes, or falls off the horse. So yeah. But
or gets fired, or goes through a divorce, or has something stolen, and that's the big thing with you. And it'd be great to hear about how you've overcome that through doing the work. And it's everyone I think will be able to relate to you on some level, not on the extreme perhaps of what you've experienced, but it's take away the extremes, and it's adversity, it's life happening, it's a challenge. So we all encounter it.
Absolutely. Or even, for those families that are unable to have children naturally, that's not something that you would expect either. But it is that resilience of, and not attaching meaning to outcomes, as we know, Nick, it's not good nor bad. It doesn't mean that your life still can't be great, but your life will still have challenges, and we all have challenges, and we all have dark days, and it's that's a normal part of life. It's not digging yourself in that rabbit hole and making a home in it, and sitting in that woe,
dwelling and marinating in the misery of it.
Absolutely. Sorry. And
is that what you were experiencing sort of before you reached out to Nick and decided, hey, I need to do a little bit of work?
Yeah. What was going on? So you said you tried other people and everything. What were you seeking help for along that path?
I felt I needed someone with a lived experience of who had adversity, and that their life had gone in a different trajectory, because I had seen a psychologist for a reasonable amount of time. However, she hadn't experienced, or I hadn't found anyone who had the experience of having that lived experience of that.
What were you going to them for? What were you looking for? Not in terms of a therapist, but in terms what were you needing help with?
I suppose just navigating through life and having someone to vent to that was impartial. But I was finding that it was a lot of talk, but there wasn't, like what you showed and what the Myndfit program showed is, you know, the attaching meaning to things, and the you know, getting stuck in it being good or bad, or it, you know, life being terrible because this had happened. And you pulled me up on a number of times of saying I'd had, you know, a catastrophic accident, and the meaning that I had attached to that. And yes, it was life-changing. However, I still wouldn't change it, if that makes, I would like it not to be maybe quite so severe, but it certainly made me a better person. I've learnt lots more about myself. I've had, you know, met some great people along the way that I would never have met, been exposed to. So I think it's, for me, very much about trying to find the positive in anything that has come my way. But I wasn't able to find anyone who, sorry, my cat's just jumped up here. She never does this. I hadn't found anyone that was relatable in that type of experiencing an injury.
And that was, I guess, the what created the rapport for us. And for people listening, you know, my personal experience with injury was blowing my knee out in the army, and having to deal with the ripple effect of that, not getting deployed, and having to, you know, get medically discharged, and my life, trajectory, as you put it before, changed significantly through that. So obviously, it wasn't to the severity or extreme that you've gone through, but I think for me, when you turned up, you were just deeply stuck, and you were going around that destructive path, and I just keep saying, applying meaning to everything, but really identifying as the accident. And it was, but there was so much to work with on the surface. It was amazing for me working with someone in your position, because I have to walk this fine line between challenging and supporting, and you know, challenging somebody in a wheelchair. It's like, how's your pity party going? And you were so wonderful to work with, and allowing me to challenge you and to work with you, and I think that's where you got the results from, though, was those times where I could hold you to account for, and bring you back to, you are responsible for your happiness, not the events of the world or life. It's where are you in all this, and why aren't you turning up for yourself anymore?
Absolutely. And that is a very fine line to walk. And I do remember you when you're saying, yeah, there was a couple of times when you said about the pity party, and I'm like, ooh, yep, okay, yep, all right, I'll take that on board. It's, yep, fair enough, because I wanted the change. I wanted to feel different, and I wanted and like you say, I was stuck. I would get to certain points in my life and felt like it was Groundhog Day with my feelings and my emotions, and trying to navigate that next stage of my life and challenges, and just couldn't seem to get through it. So with your help and you know, the work that I've done, I've done, you know, I feel like I'm in a really great place. And
we
it's
had that session.
Still not without its challenges, absolutely, but that's everyone's life.
But it's such an important lesson. Like, so many people listening to this may be reaching out for help or thinking about reaching out, and because our life's gotten to a point where it's like, feels like Groundhog Day. I'm experiencing the same thoughts and emotions over and over again, and I don't want to anymore. And I have these adversities, like you said, Joy, that we all have going on at some point in our life, and I want help with that. And then we go to seek help. But most people, unfortunately, just want to have their stories validated and be told they're right, and go, yep, no, it was the accident, or yes, it is your partner's an asshole, or yes, it is, it's your job, or it's because this happened to you when you were a child. But we're just going to stay stuck in the same place unless we're open enough to be challenged. And I hope that, you know, like you said, Nick, it's hard challenging somebody who's sitting in front of you in a wheelchair. Like, if someone's going to get help, like, when you're challenged, you got to see that as a good thing, even though it feels like a bit of a prod and it might hurt a little bit. We've got to be open to it, because if we're not open to it, we'll never change, and those thoughts and emotions will keep being the same ones over and over again.
Absolutely.
I remember offering to Joy the Stoic philosophy of amor fati, a love of fate. You know, and you've got to be patient with people and doing the work and knowing where they're at. And I thought Joy was finally at this position where she was open enough to grasp this, a love of fate. Love, you know, we don't have to love that I'm in a wheelchair or love that I'm a paraplegic, but we do need to allow everything to exist as it exists. Otherwise, as soon as we're preferring it's not to be that way, then you're just going to go backwards. And you know, it was wonderful for me to work with Joy, because she was so receptive and was so open. And yes, she had her moments of, oh, well, fuck that. And, you know, but that's all part of the process. And you know, having a session yesterday, you're in 3 months now, and just listening to you talk, it was just like, I actually had a client after you, and I borrowed a bit of your journey, and because he had some wisdom teeth out, and then he was like, oh, I can't go to work, and I can't, and I'm like, fell off a horse, paraplegic, in a wheelchair, had some wisdom teeth out. You're going to go back to work next week. You've got money in the bank, everything, and it's really fun when you're light and playful with things to constructively compare them. And this dude just broke down. He's a great young tradie up in Brizzy, and he lost it. He was like, you're right, and it's so you can play with the ego like that, and it's all relating back to the ego.
I remember, Nick, you shared a story about a client. Like, I'm talking loads, but 18 months, 2 years ago. And it was a guy with his kids, and he was constantly getting, you know, pissed off because they were leaving the towels on the floor. And I remember you had sort of called him out and said, look, imagine when it's all said and done, you know, how much do the towels matter? And I think you said, you know, you started crying at how silly it was. And I still have that whenever I feel myself go to, you know, get overly reactive. And so after Tommy, I'm like, this is the towels on the floor, you know, and then I have a laugh at it, you know, because at the end of the day, 99% of the stuff that we think is really important doesn't matter in the grand scheme.
And it's, you know, Ryan, for you with little children, it's also, these are the greatest moments of our lives. Like, especially now, like the age, it's full on, and it's, you know, exhausting and stuff, but you will look back at this and go, oh my gosh, I remember when he was 5, and you know, mine are now, my youngest is about to turn 18. nearly 21 and 24, and I now go, oh my gosh, you know, that's just flown by in the blink of an eye. And
It's
it
crazy. About 6 months ago, I had this weird thought, and because whenever we're at anywhere at the shops or wherever, me and him hold hands. And I had this weird thought, maybe I was having a rough day or something, and I had the thought where I was going to let go and be like, mate, we don't need to hold hands. I just thought it. And then straight away I thought, there's going to be a time in the not too distant future where you're not going to be holding hands anymore. So please
yeah,
treasure every moment. So that's exactly what we're
absolutely
talking about.
enjoy
I
it.
think with Joy though it was, and all of us, but for people who reach out and want to do this work, as soon as you start wrestling with reality, you stop being present, and you're in the reality of what should, could, or would ideally be happening, and you're bouncing between, you know, past and the future, and the imagination and the memory, and you miss all these moments. You're not present to observe those moments for what they are, and just to have that um, have that very in-depth and intense experience. Like, just I'm just here and I'm just watching you do your thing, because you can't make it about other people when you're in such suffering, and when the ego's so activated. It's all about me, my, I, and when you finally do the work and get to a certain point, you can just sit there and you're so deeply content and at peace with who and how you are, and the state of things, even if they're not ideal, even if they're not perfect and utopia, you still got this equanimity and this sense of contentedness. You're in that position just to observe your kids or your partner or your clients or people walking by, and just like, oh wow, it's all just happening, and it's just nice to be connected. We after your
Absolutely.
session, after your session, I don't know why, I said to Em last night, "Are you happy, honey?" She's like, "Yeah, I am." And I'm like, "Great." She said, "Are you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Why?" And then I just heard myself reeling off. I'm happy because I've got wonderful clients, and I'm happy because I get to chat with Ryan on the podcast tomorrow, and Joy's coming on. I'm happy because the kids are doing well, and there was just this effortless list of all these things that I'm happy for, but they're not the reasons that I'm happy. I'm present and at peace, and content within myself, and then I can look at all those things and just experience deep gratitude. And I think that's something that you were struggling with, is to find gratitude.
Absolutely, because I also have in the last 18 months had a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. And I remember there at one stage struggled a lot with fatigue. And I was, I've have previously been a very active person, you know, go, 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 and was struggling processing that I needed to rest. And I associated rest with not doing, not being successful, not being less, I suppose, that I needed to rest all of this, and it was wasting time, and I was, you know, it was not where I wanted to be. And I can remember you saying to me a number of times, if you need to rest, you need to rest. You know, you've just got to be open that that doesn't mean anything, because again, I was attaching meaning to having to rest as
It's still
less.
doing something. It's, and
Yeah,
that client that I had yesterday, he's so conditioned to ticking boxes, and doing something means working and achieving and getting things done. And I said, look at the reality of it. Man has had surgery and needs time to rest and recover. Resting and recovering is still doing something. And there was
yeah,
this really interesting pregnant pause, and I could hear the cogs turning, and then it finally dawned on him. He's like, ah, it's just, it's so different to what your association with doing something
We're
is. So you've got to,
conditioned. We're conditioned to be valuable and useful when we're doing, so we feel useless and
yeah.
invaluable when we're not.
absolutely. And that was really a big thing to get around for me too, is that that I don't have to be doing or working or active 100% of the time. And it's I had associated my success with doing things, not being. And so it took me a long time to get my head around that. Well, my success is what I deem it to be, not what, and that is being content and being, like you're saying, being in a place where you do have the ability to sit back and go, yeah, happy. There's all these great things going on in my life, and I'm really grateful for, family or this or that or opportunities. Whereas it took me a while to get to that point of not associating activity with happiness.
You're very skilled at outsourcing your self-worth, and it was
Yeah.
all external, and I love the distinction that you've made there and touched on between doing and being, and you're a human being. And I think we touched on yesterday about your sense of purpose now, and for so many people, their sense of purpose is connected to their work, and they deeply identify with that. But your sense of purpose now is just to be and to take care and to nurture and to nourish and to look after yourself, so you're then in a position to communicate with your kids and live life, and you've had to do a lot of adapting. And that's I think for me, the number one thing people struggle with is they're so stuck in their conditioning and they're so rigid and concrete in their patterns that they lose that flexibility. They lose the ability to adapt when the universe requires them to, and that's where they get stuck and marinate and go down and down. And I mean, poor Ryan's had a couple of days of this, and his sense of self-worth would be just horrendous at the moment because he's just had to take a few nano naps. Did you need a blanket for your
turn my camera off? I don't like looking at myself at the minute. I wanted to ask about that acceptance piece, Joy, because you said, it took years for you to finally accept, the accident and what had happened to you. And that's such a big piece with anybody doing this work. And for you, was it like a single moment where you're like, okay, I fully accept this? Or was it just this gradual thing where all of a sudden you woke up one day and you kind of realized that, okay, this is the reality of what's happened, and I'm not going to, fight what's happened anymore? Was there a moment, or how do you remember that? Because I've worked with clients, and just before I answer, and this is a big one, and it's like, until we can accept the reality of what's happening in our life, we're stuck and we can't get through it. And I remember I've had clients before who maybe you're doing a consult and let's say it's a breakup. And I'm like, look, until you can accept that, and I can't click my fingers and make you accept it, but we can do the work, and over time we can get you there. But until you accept it, you'll never move on with your life, and you'll keep having, the Groundhog Day. And I remember I've had some people who are like, no, I'll never accept it. And I'm like, well, we can't work together then, because if you're not even open to accepting it. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember saying to Joy that Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, before you can heal a person, ask them if they're willing to give up that which is making them ill to begin with. And I'd love to hear Joy's answer to your question, because I've got a perspective on it, but I'd love to hear Joy's. What was that moment for you, Joy?
Interesting question. I think I accepted it, but it still tripped me up. And it particularly around Christmas, like I have historically found Christmas really quite hard. But it was only this Christmas that I realized that it wasn't actually the accident that was tripping me up. It was the loneliness of after a marriage breakdown, and Christmas and New Year's traditionally a family time, and my children go off with their well, at that stage they were going off with their dad at that stage, and that was really upsetting for me. But so I think I accepted it on a superficial level, but on a
consciously you had, yeah.
Yeah, I had accepted it, but I was stuck in my self-worth around what my new reality was, as in appearance and navigating the world in the chair. And so I think it really took me probably a good 7 years to really get to a certain point, whereas now I don't really think about it. It just is now. I don't know if that makes sense.
We did a lot of internal work. We did a few sessions where Joy would close her eyes and go internally. We had to really get into that subconscious, because I think intellectually you could grasp and understand that there was change and that there was a new normal, but fundamentally I don't think I noticed there hadn't been that complete surrendering and that complete letting go and accepting. And I remember tapping into those sessions with you and just very gently offering that you can let go and giving yourself permission to let go and to move in. And trust was the big thing for you, because that shock to the system had compromised the self-worth, the self-respect, and that self-trust. And it was, how do I trust myself navigating these uncharted waters? And a lot of our work was around just, you've got the skills and tools. You learn to navigate your previous world, and this is no different in that regard. It's just learning to navigate a different world, and you've done it before, so you can do it again. And building that trust was probably, I don't know if it was that aware for you, Joy, but for me, it's just that rebuilding that trust was pivotal.
I've just had a really big thought then. So the accident was an accident, first and foremost, but it was also a series of things that I did. Do you know what I mean? So therefore the accident was, for lack of a better word, my fault. So it's just made me realize, like when you were saying about the trust, then I have only just realized that I didn't trust myself to not get myself in a stupid situation again. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now I am confident that I can navigate through anything that life throws at me.
And that was the just looking at yourself through those distorted lenses, and of, he who blames others has a long way to go. He who blames himself is halfway there. He who blames nobody has arrived. Blame is a distorted lens. So you had this tendency, and I think it's very, when there's adversity or challenge, it's just very revealing, and it reveals mostly our impurities. And for you, the tendency was to be very self-critical and to beat yourself up and blame yourself. And you've done such a great amount of work around that. And I get what you're saying about to not get, but even that language, to get myself in a stupid situation. It's that just popped up from the subconscious again. And that's where your continued work is, to observe and catch those moments and to reframe them and to go, it's not a stupid moment. It was just a moment. There's that little applying meaning to it again. And you're not the villain in this. You didn't wreck your family. You didn't. None of this is. You're not that powerful. And this is what the ego does. It thinks, I'm so powerful that I can ruin everything, and such a stupid thing for doing, and you're not that powerful. that's where we need to surrender as well. It's surrendering to the new reality of what is, but also surrendering to, I'm really not that powerful. Reality is, woman was riding a horse and came off. That's anything beyond that is just unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And the trust thing is big too, because we also, what I found with clients is there's an element of trusting ourselves again. And so can I get through this and can I, thrive in this new life? And then there's also trusting, we spoke about having a plan that never really works out. And some people could call it, the universe. So it's like, in your instance, you're like taking that full ownership and saying, oh, I, did this and I fell off the horse. And a lot of people will say, well, this thing happened to me, which can be kind of just as destructive as well. And so then we have to build up this trust with the universe or the plan, because we think, well, if this thing happened to me, what's coming around the next corner? Can I trust that? Because the next thing might mean that I'm not okay completely. But, I found that people that
And
have been through this great adversity and have done the work and are still doing the work and coming out the other side have this level of resilience within them. That's like, doesn't matter what the fuck happens to me next. I'm going to be okay. I'll
but
work it
they're
out.
not looking at it through the binary black and white lens anymore. And remember, I spoke to you about my client who it dawned on him that when he realized his relationship with trust was very one sided. It was, I'm only going to trust that everything's going to be okay. And he finally reached this point where he goes, no, I've got to trust that things aren't going to be pleasant as well. I've got to trust the entirety of it. I've got to trust that around the corner I might get kicked in the dick, or I might get hugged from a stranger, or I might get whatever
Both at
it
the same
is.
time.
It's not. And might get hugged for being accidentally kicked in the dick. It's but whatever. That's that amor fati. It's that so imperative. This is humanity 2,500 years ago, like a long, long time ago. They were sitting there going, "Oh, well, not everything goes according to plan, so maybe we better embrace the entirety of it all." That was happening in ancient Greece. That was happening in ancient India, and it's just still so relevant to this day that it's like, don't only desire nice and pleasant things to happen, because as soon as you desire only that, then when the other stuff occurs, which it will do, then you're really gonna go through the mill.
You will suffer. You will suffer. Is there, Joy, is there any practices or anything? I know that sounds like you're seeing Nick on a, maintenance level, which, I highly recommend to anyone, is to, even when things are going quote unquote good in our life, it's always great to be able to check in with someone, to be able to work out how life's going and everything. But is there anything else on like a weekly or daily basis, or is there any sort of personal routines or checks and balances that you have in your life?
For the first, so my marriage then did break down, but it was not going to be sustainable even before the accident. So when that happened, and my motto back then was that as long as we're all fed and we've got a roof over our head at the end of the day, that's a good day. So that was always, when things were getting a little hectic or challenging with the kids, or life was a bit challenging, that was, as long as we were fed, that was a good day. And I sort of stuck to that motto sort of throughout there. I've since moved away from the kids, and I'm now in Queensland. And couple of things that I try and do is like sit in the sun first thing of a morning to try and get some UV and stuff. Try and do some meditation a couple of times a week, and exercise. We've got a really great spinal gym up here that I go to a couple of times a week. So it's just all, very normal things for everyone. Exercise is good for us, a good diet, connecting with nature when I can, and I have a couple of horses still, and try and go up and see them a number of times. I'm not riding at the moment. I had a bit of an oops in August last year. I didn't fall, but because I'm osteoporotic, I sort of fell to the side, and we Velcro my legs to support them in the saddle, and I broke my leg quite badly in a couple of spots, so I haven't been riding. So that used to certainly be my utopia as such. It was just very freeing, and I certainly loved it. But at this stage, I'm not sure if I'll get back on, or what the process is with that.
What
we summed it
do
up
you-
yesterday. We just summed it up yesterday by what Joy's really dedicating herself to now is being healthy, and the definition of health, as we unpacked yesterday as well, is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being. So
and big guns.
mental and Des and Troy, yeah. So we spoke about doing her mental reps and observing herself and catching and reframing and continuing to surrender, and then physically, the exercising and the diet is important, but the social aspect is really important too, especially for someone whose world, I suppose you could say, gets a bit smaller through not having all the access to it. And Joy's done a wonderful job of finding a place to live in an apartment, and engaging with the people there, and really sort of becoming part of the community. And I think that's all three of them are so equally important. But people forget about it was primarily physical health, and then mental health is slowly creeping up. But I think the social health was off everybody's radar, and Joy's a great sort of example of how that's really important to maintain.
And how do you stop yourself? And we all have these moments. We're all human beings. We have the woe is me moments, or as Nick would call it, the pity party. We all do. People listening to this will be having one right now. How do you pull yourself out of that? Because I've just noticed people that have been through big adversity, especially people who now have a disability, really fall into that and stay there, and they won't get up and get sunlight in the morning. They won't meditate. They won't go to a gym and work out and do any exercise. They won't engage socially, and things will just gradually get worse and worse and worse for them mentally and emotionally. And I'm sure you have those moments. Like, how do you pull yourself out of that? It's like the first step is recognizing it, I suppose.
That's exactly right, is recognizing it. And it did take me a little bit of time to sort of recognize it, especially the social stuff. Like you say, my world can be a little bit smaller, and I certainly have recognized, I suppose, because I'm like to try and grow. I'm a bit of a constantly striving person, and was trying to improve and go, all right, well, why am I feeling like this? What is going on? And there are days where I don't want to, absolutely, and I can't push myself through it and just go, all right, do you know what? Today's a day where I'm just going to rest at home, chill out, find something on Netflix, and but I don't allow myself to stay there for any length of time. And
sorry to interrupt. That's another example of trust, Joy, and that's you trusting that I'm going to give myself permission to wallow or do whatever I'm doing, because I trust that I'm going to come out of this. And your recovery time from that, in the past, you would have spent a long time sort of running laps down there. But to allow yourself just to be human and to have an off day, and to trust that I'll wake up tomorrow and find myself sitting in the sunshine again, or connecting with people, like that's so subtle, but it's so big as well. It's really insightful.
I was a bit like that in rehab too, because I was in rehab for 14 weeks. So I was away from the family for that period of time. And I had a bit of the same attitude down there as like, well, I can only be like this for 24 hours. And then, because the days in rehab were tough. Like, there was lots of unknowns. There was lots of new ways of learning to manage your body. It was like, I even remember first learning to transfer in and out of a car was just completely and utterly exhausting. And I had a very big goal and mission back then, was to get back to the family. So it was just 24 hours and that's it. You've got to suck it up and get on with it. And I just try to do that now too, is like, I'm allowed to feel what I feel. I'm allowed to have an off day, but I can't, but wallowing in that for any length of time is not helpful for me.
You've got boundaries now. You've set boundaries for yourself now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't, it's not something I will let myself, spend any length of time in.
Are you listening to this, Ryan? Are you sort of taking any notes from this? Or
I've got so many notes. I'm going to re-watch this as soon as we finish. See if I can come out of my own pity party.
So we'll have to finish up soon. But moving forward, you've sort of you've had and I think the similar experience with us is it took me 8 years after the army. I hit my rock bottom. A big part of developing agoraphobia and being in that sort of suicidal headspace for me and that deep depression was that I hadn't surrendered, I hadn't let go, I hadn't accepted, I hadn't embraced, I hadn't seen this as an opportunity to find new things. And I found golf out of my journey, and Ryan, and there's been so many wonderful things come into my life. And the Dalai Lama says sometimes not getting what you want is more important than getting what you want, because the ego has these desires for what it thinks is going to make it happy, but then the universe goes, "Oh, sorry, no, that's going to be pleasure. Here's actual happiness." And so you've done your work. You're back on your own 2 feet, metaphorically. You've got that strong foundation. What's the map look like moving forward now for you? Because having something to look forward to is really important, and we spoke about that yesterday too.
Absolutely, and being consistent on booking things in and planning things, I think, in advance. I haven't historically been that organized to do that, whereas now I've recognized that that's something that I need to be really proactive with. So I'm going to do a bit of travel, going overseas in June with going to meet my daughter over in Spain, so that'll be pretty exciting.
Awesome.
Which is great.
It'd be so easy for limiting beliefs to kick in, wouldn't it, Joy? It'd be so easy to create this "I can't" mentality. I can't go traveling. I can't go to Europe. I can't. So is that a real conscious thing for you now, or is that just through the work that you've done that you're just more, you don't have those sort of limiting beliefs kicking in?
No, I suppose the thoughts are there of what if something goes wrong, certainly, but I know that I'm resourceful enough to navigate my way through whatever challenges come my way. And I suppose I'm just looking at it as, life's short. Things can change and do change in the blink of an eye, and if not now, when? So it's about, for me, grabbing opportunities when they present themselves and say fuck yes instead of fuck no, really, because if I don't do that, my world will just stay so small. So it's about traveling.
Dream.
And potentially, trying to date, which I'm not good at. So that's sort of the thought process, and enjoying what I do have. Like I live in a beautiful part of the world. The weather is great, certainly great for my body, and just getting out there and enjoying what I've got on the days that I feel that I can. But on the days that I can't, it's okay to rest too.
Well, if you're not inspired by that, you don't have a heartbeat. It's Ryan and I have got something to look forward to, and we've got the Dong Cup coming up again, going to China, and I think it's going to be very appropriate to call it the third leg instead of the second coming. It's the third leg.
Well done, well done. I like that,
Well
mate.
done, definitely. Yeah.
But
Thank
I
you.
always tell people, whether it's friends or whatever, they have ideas, whether it's travel or these things that they want to do, and they're just kind of in their head. And I'm like, have you booked it yet? They're like, no. I'm like, fucking do it now. Like, book it now. Otherwise, there will always be an excuse to not do things. I
Absolutely.
had a friend go on a holiday last year, and he hadn't been on overseas for years, and he's like, oh, it was just the best. We just have to make it a yearly thing. I'm like, sweet. Have you booked next year's flight yet? He's like, no. I'm like, fucking do it. Because
Yeah.
the weeks and the months and the years roll on, and then all of a sudden years have gone by. And like you said, Joy, life's short. And at the end of it,
Yeah.
we're a collection of memories and what we do and who we do it with and how we felt. And yeah, hats off to you for booking that trip to Spain. Where are you going? Barcelona, Madrid? What are you going for?
Yeah, so
Barcelona.
flying into Barcelona and then doing a couple of days in there and then doing a Virgin cruise to a couple of stops in Rome, and then we come back.
Your sex life can't be that bad. You can't have reverted, identify as a virgin again, can you? It's not how it
No,
works. I'm not sure
not
that's
how it works. A Virgin ship cruise.
Ah,
And then,
sorry.
yeah, we come back. We come via Ibiza, and it just happens to coincide with my birthday. That was not planned, but that's pretty cool.
Have you got any connections over there to hook her up for a birthday house? Any old inmates that you know are hanging out in
But
Ibiza?
Barcelona, I do.
All right, okay. Send me their details.
Hopefully you don't want their details.
So, look, it'll be exciting. I'm really looking forward to. I've started to try and learn to do watercolor painting in the last little while, so I'm really looking forward to the art in Barcelona and just embracing whatever comes our way.
Yeah,
It'll be good.
Gaudi Park Güell
Yeah,
is absolutely amazing. Some of the architecture around there
yeah,
is incredible. So I think you're gonna have a great time.
yeah.
And
It
the
will be
food,
great.
Spanish is my favorite cuisine in the whole
Yeah,
world. It is the best. It is so good.
yeah.
Same
No.
as this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really exciting, and it's lovely to be able to meet Lily over there also. So that's really great memories to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joy, thanks so much for coming on. You're just an absolute inspiration, and
Thank you.
not because of what you do or what you say, just because of who you are.
Thank you.
And you're like a testament to doing this work. And I hope everyone listening can go, hey, I'm going through my own version of adversity, but if this human being here can go through that, all the trials and tribulations of what you've been through, and come out the other side with the attitude you have now, and that not wallowing, or if you are not doing it for too long, then I think this is a very, very important episode. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored.
What a joy to be with.
Yeah, I know.
All the joy
everyone.
puns are going to come out now.
They are. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Nico. And we'll see you all next time.